As President Biden pushes to get his nearly $2 trillion stimulus bill passed, they're going from bad to worse for millions of Americans who just can't wait any longer. Even under the best of circumstances, we are looking at another couple of weeks at the very least before Congress can get anything passed. In the meantime, 30 million adults say they sometimes or often do not have enough to eat in America, and that includes nearly 1 in 5 households that have children living under their roof. As you can see from this chart, the problem, it is getting worse and worse with each passing week. The Washington Post, they've been traveling around the country speaking to people who are struggling, including this single mom who's unemployed with 5 mouths to feed.
Mom, I'm hungry. I know, honey. I'm sorry. Have a spoonful of peanut butter. You know, there's really nothing to give them.
Here. Well, if you don't eat it, I'll eat yours.
Katie and Michaela would have spaghetti noodles with butter and Parmesan. Then the Parmesan was gone and then the butter ran out. So, you know, you try to be creative, but as a parent, that's the worst feeling. But there were several days where we all sort of just stayed in bed and slept just to not be hungry.
And joining us now is the Post video journalist who worked on that piece, Zoeann Murphy. And you guys went around to Pennsylvania, to Maryland, to California, and to New Mexico as well. And you found a lot of the same problems. For people like me, and I'm sure a lot of our audience says, well, wait a second. We got food stamps and we have things like food banks or pantries to close that gap. But one of the things you take away from the series you worked on here is it's not nearly closing the gap.
Right. Yeah. I mean, food insecurity is not a new issue in the United States, but what we've seen is that COVID-19 has really compounded that issue, and that a lot of people are going to food banks for the first time. I mean, a lot of people are newly in this situation, and we wanted to tell some of their stories.
Some of the stories that really stuck with me were, these are not people who've been on the fringes, as you mentioned, for their whole adult lives. For the first time, they've had to ask for help. And I think they thought it was easier to find that help when they had to put their hand out than they actually could. These food pantries are overwhelmed. And for some people, as I understood, they have to make a calculation that they got to drive 45 minutes to go to some other place when they don't have enough gas money. And for the time they'll have to spend to try and get the food that way, that's time taken away from trying to find a job. I mean, it's the ultimate Hobson's choice.
Really. I went to one food bank in Uniontown, Pennsylvania, and there were 1,000 cars there lined up to receive food boxes, 1,000 cars at that food bank in Uniontown, Pennsylvania. And I drove along the line of cars and saw them all parked along the side of the road and spoke to many of the people that were sitting in those cars. And so many of them had come from rural areas to that town to get these boxes of food, and it had just become a routine part of their lives to feed their families.
I know there was one family in California profiled where the dad was concerned about trying to feed his kids. And then at the same end, he's worried about an eviction that he might be looking at. And then he's got kids who can't handle the online learning here. And it reminded me of a piece this past weekend in the Times that just focused on working mothers and this idea that they kept falling more and more underwater by the day and they couldn't breathe. I got that sense from that dad here that if help doesn't come and come soon, he's not going to be able to hang on much longer.
Yeah, I mean, people are really trying their best. They're trying to get work. But like you said, availability of cars is an issue. Availability of jobs is an issue right now. And taking care of people's children, I mean, that needs to be a priority, keeping your kids safe. And so all of these things are coming together to create a very difficult situation for a lot of people in the United States.
And you know, years ago, I went around to a lot of food pantries as well as also the major hubs that would do the distribution of it. And they explained to me that they started off years ago doing 1 or 2 meals a week. And then that turned into 5 days a week. Then that turned out to be not 1 meal a day, but 2 meals a day. And then 7 days they were open. This is before we even heard of COVID-19. How overtaxed are these places, they can't, the supply is not coming close to meeting the demand, is it?
Yeah, no, the food banks really need help. They definitely need support. I mean, and one of the amazing things about what we experienced publishing this piece was that there was just this overwhelming response from audiences who want to help. And it's really important that they know where to help so that they know they can turn to their local food bank or they can find the places that can receive their support. But it was amazing. People reached out to us through every form of communication, right? Twitter, Instagram, email, telephone calls. And our audiences, they knew the names of the people in this piece. They really connected with the individuals in the piece. And they asked, how can I give Kelly gift cards? How can I offer to buy a month of groceries? You know, how can I wire them some money to help them get through this? And how do I turn to my local food bank and support my local food bank so in my community I can be helping my neighbors as well? Because this is really an issue that has stretched across the country.
You know, at least in years past, I always found that many were unwilling to go in front of the camera because they feared the stigma that was attached for having to ask for help. Or I would always be struck that at these food pantries, people would say, you know, look at the back door. Who comes that doesn't want to be seen coming through the front door right now because they don't want to be. It's different now because so many people find themselves in the same circumstances where you struck it all by the willingness of people to say, I've tried everything. And I find myself here, you know, and I don't know how this gets better a month from now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was struck by people's willingness to talk. I mean, their bravery and courage, like to share their stories on camera. It takes a lot. It really does take a lot. And also by the people who have reached out to us since this story published and said, you know, I really relate and now I feel a little less ashamed and I'm going to go reach out for help now too.
Finally, maybe some of my audience relates to what they're seeing on the screen or they want to help. You mentioned resources. What's the best way to learn about where they can get help or give help?
Yeah, Feeding America has a great database that they can look at online and find out where their local food bank is. And then, you know, if you're somebody that needs to reach out to that food bank to receive help, you can do that. Or if you're somebody who wants to be able to donate or volunteer at a food bank, that's an option as well. I mean, so many of these places run on volunteers, which is pretty amazing.
And especially in a pandemic. Great reporting, you and your team. I appreciate you giving us a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for your interest in the story.
And folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll wrap things up.